Number 5. Space Camp. Starting this list off, we arrive at the Apollo 8 mission. Well, 7 other missions before it, but it was a little rocky back then, you know? The early days. But Apollo 8 was the first fully crewed spacecraft to leave low Earth orbit and the first human spaceflight to reach the moon. Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders, aka the crew, orbited the moon 10 times without landing. December 21st, 1968. The Apollo 8 astronauts returned to Earth on December 27th, 1968. Now, here's the scary part. Apparently, while they were up there, they claimed to have seen some pretty strange stuff. Some weird lights, glowing moving balls, and apparently bonfires all over the moon. What? Yeah, apparently the men said it looked like smoke and small bonfires when visiting the far side of the moon. When the capsule passed behind the moon for 45 minutes, the crew claimed to have seen multiple lights coming from the surface. And thankfully, NASA even transcribed what they heard. Borman says, bonfires. Anders says campfires. All in all, we have astronauts puzzled at what they're seeing. 7 months later, Apollo 11 is performing a mission orbiting the moon and captures apparently a bunch of things that are out of the ordinary. Buzz and Collins both claim to have seen things like lava flowing, aliens parked on craters, to even small bonfires and flickers on the surface. Of course, there's no oxygen on the moon, so what could have caused the fire and the smoke?
Number 4 on this list is aliens. Aliens, although unlikely, need to be considered when determining whether or not to go to space or not. If there is a risk that we could run into aliens and in the process of doing so, piss those aliens off, then that would really not be very good for any of us. There have been tons of stories about aliens and the possibility of them being out in the universe at this point. In fact, I think it's pretty much an accepted belief that if the universe is infinite, then there has to be life somewhere else in the universe. But it could be closer than you think. One famous story is that of the knock. Tanya Sirohi writes, "First off, there's no sound in space. There's only vacuum. And this is precisely what makes this story a strange one. Back in 2003, astronaut Yang Liwei, the first to be sent into space by the Chinese space program, was sitting in his space shuttle when he reportedly heard a knock. He described it as someone knocking the body of the spaceship, just as knocking an iron bucket with a wooden hammer would sound. Apparently, he's not the only one to have experienced this. There were other Chinese astronauts between 2005 and 2008 who've reported hearing similar sounds. A lot of people have heard this story and credited it to being aliens. A lot of people have heard this story and credited it to being aliens that caused the sound. If that's the case, then it's something NASA really needs to consider if they ever want to go to space again. Number 3 on this list is space snakes. Now, I'm gonna be honest guys, this one is just kind of silly, but I honestly just wanted to throw it in here because it really does make for a good story. And let's face it, if this story is actually true and it's all real, then I also would think twice about making another mission to space as well. Tanya Sirohi says, retired NASA astronaut Dr. Story Musgrave has a lot to his credit. So it would be difficult to pass this off as a lie, but he claims he saw an 8-foot long white snake floating through space. It's not hard to imagine that this could have been a hose detached from the spaceship, but Musgrave, he remains adamant. So once again folks, I want to reiterate that this is a bit of a silly entry, but if we suspend our disbelief for just 1 second, then it gets pretty terrifying pretty quickly. If there is actually just a bunch of giant white snakes floating through space, then I don't know if there's actually a large enough sum of money that you could pay me to go and fly into that. Also, who knows what these things would even be capable of? Maybe they're super smart and we just have no idea. I, for one, do not want to be the person having to find that out. Number 2 on this list is Elon Musk. So I entitled this entry Elon Musk, but ultimately it's just billionaires in general at this point. For some reason, it's not enough for these guys with billions of dollars to just own some fancy cars and yachts. No, they need to have their own fancy rocket ships as well. And they've made it their mission to fly to space in some capacity and do it before all of the other billionaires do it. Well, guess what? this is good news for NASA. SpaceX was founded in 2002 by Elon Musk. Google says Space Exploration Technologies Corp. is an American spacecraft manufacturer, space launch provider, and a satellite communications corporation headquartered in Hawthorne, California. It was founded in 2002 by Elon Musk with the goal of reducing space transportation costs to enable the colonization of Mars. NASA is probably loving the sound of that last bit there. Reducing space transportation costs? At the end of the day, NASA's whole mission isn't to worry about costs and other things, it's research. They want to research space and learn more about it. If I'm NASA, then I'm looking over at Elon Musk and thinking that this guy might be a really nice guy to get close to. Let Elon Musk do all the work and fit the bill of going to space, and you can tag along for the ride and complete your mission of researching stuff along the way. If someone else is going to do all the legwork for me, then it honestly just makes sense that I sit back and strap in for the ride. Billionaires, for whatever reason, have decided that they want to take the reins on this one, and I think NASA is happy to let them. And number one on this list is money. Even NASA, one of the richest organizations in the world and a group that is tackling problems such as space travel, runs into money problems. At the end of the day, our society is built on the back of the mighty dollar, and if you don't have enough of said dollars, then you're not going to be able to do what you want to do. Every time NASA launches a space shuttle to go into space, literally every single time, that is going to cost $450 million. That's just one space shuttle going on one single mission. Now, $450 million is a lot of money, but to a big corporation, that could be considered chump change if you think about it. McDonald's, for instance, is thought to spend over $1 billion every year on advertising in the United States alone. That's just on advertising, let alone all the money they spend on the actual product and labor and transportation and everything that goes into making their business run. However, McDonald's makes a lot of money off of those advertisements. They pump the money into silly commercials, and we pump our money into poorly made burgers. This sort of business model doesn't really translate to space travel though. At the end of the day, $450 million is nothing if that $450 million is being spent on an operation that could bring in $1 billion, let's say. But in this case, that $450 million isn't being spent on that. That money is being spent, and then they aren't getting any of it back. There aren't any McDonald's in space, and there isn't any willing customers to spend money on stuff up there. In fact, there really isn't anything there at all. Throughout history, people go where the money is. Usually, it doesn't even matter how dangerous things are. Mining for oil or coal was extremely dangerous back in the early days, but there was a lot of money in it, and therefore people did it. There just simply is not a lot of money currently to be found in space. If, for instance, someone discovered a rare and valuable mineral or rock that's sitting on the moon and it was something that people would pay lots of money for, then I guarantee NASA would be up and running and sending tons of space shuttles to the moon. I think maybe the thing that's so unsettling about this is that we could be missing out on tons of human progress, but money is holding us back. Like, maybe there are some really important things to be learned in space that we could be learning about right now if money wasn't a factor. Hopefully somebody is ready to fork over the big bucks soon and we can get some people back up in the air.
Number 5. The Great Attractor. The Great Attractor is a gravitational anomaly in space and the apparent central gravitational point of the Laniakea supercluster. The observed anomaly suggests a localized concentration of mass, millions of times more massive than the Milky Way. That's a lot of M's. It is inconveniently blurred by our own Milky Way galaxy view, lying just behind the zone of avoidance. Basically, we know it's there, but we can't really see it. Yet, in visible light wavelengths, the Great Attractor is difficult to observe. In fact, it will not be visible for another 100 million years until Earth will be on the other side of the Milky Way galaxy, allowing us to see past the galactic plane of matter. It's terrifying. It's not a black hole, but acts like one. Okay. With its discovery in the late 70s, the Milky Way actually moves through space after a series of velocity tests. Astrophysicists found that the Milky Way was moving towards the constellation of Centaurus at about 600 kilometers per second. Yeah. The discovery of cosmic microwave background dipoles were used to reflect the motion towards the great attractor, allowing us to initialize there is something really there. When first discovered, we had no way to see through the zone of avoidance, but while that region blocks much of the visible light beyond, the gas and dust anomalies block infrared and X-ray light as much as they can. As X-ray astronomy became more powerful, we could start to see objects around that part of the sky. And what they found was a large supercluster of galaxies in the area of the Great Attractor known as the Norma Cluster, a mass of about 1,000 trillions of our suns. That's thousands of galaxies in the same place. When we look at an even larger region of galaxies, we find that the local galaxies in the Great Attractor are moving towards something even larger, known as the Shapley Supercluster. It contains more than 8,000 galaxies and has a mass of more than 10 million billion suns. That sounds made up. The Shapley Supercluster is in fact the most massive galaxy cluster within a billion light years of us, and we and every galaxy in our corner of the universe are moving slowly towards it. Dude, I gotta sleep tonight, really? Number 4, Airbuds. As always, dudes, if you dig what we do here on Top 5 Scary, hit that thumbs up button or leave a comment down below. It really helps us out. What's the biggest NASA secret you know of? Let me know down below. I'll check it out. When we think about astronauts that have spent their fair share up in space, we can't forget the experiments in the early stages of both the Soviets and the American space programs. It truly was a race, pushing the limits faster and faster, bigger and bolder kind of stuff, and with that omelet comes a couple broken eggs. We often forget that NASA has sent its fair share of animals up there as well, and of course, unfortunately, not many of them have returned back to us. Yeah, very sad. Science is one of those things where its benefits are tremendous, but the hypothesis parts sometimes are a little dark and grim. We remember Laika, the space dog, and her 103-minute cosmic journey aboard Sputnik 2, but let's not forget the infamous Able and Baker. This was the American version of Laika, only a year later too. 1959, the United States launched one female rhesus monkey named Able and one female squirrel monkey named Baker into space. This mission lasted only 15 minutes and they both safely returned back home. Their predecessors, not so lucky. See, a couple of animals have yet to return from their space mission. Mice, geckos, dogs. It was a different time. To announce their successful flight, NASA unveiled Able and Baker to journalists in the same room where just a month prior they had introduced the Mercury 7 crew as the country's first human astronauts. Big jumps, right? Sadly, after the training and missions, both animals passed. But you can visit them at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum where they're both on display. A little dark and grim, but we pay homage. Number 3. Valkyrie. NASA has been experimenting with a little bit more tech in the last 20 years. A little bit more robotics instead of fitting humans into a capsule. Seems like this next project has been in the works for some years, but under silent lock and key until recent years. Valkyrie is the name of the NASA's new semi-secretive AI project. Taken from Norse mythology, Valkyrie is designed to be a robust, rugged, and entirely electric humanoid robot capable of operating in degraded or damaged human-engineered environments. The NASA R5, aka Valkyrie, is the size of a full human adult with a 7-digit price tag, putting it a little bit more expensive than the very terrestrial Tesla bot. This robot was originally built for the 2013 DARPA Robotics Challenge. The 6-foot, 300-pound piece of machinery represents the future of space exploration. It's the first step towards a goal of human colonization on Mars and other planets in our solar system. Dude, this is nuts! High hopes for the robot, however currently tethered to the ceiling of a warehouse in Lowell, Massachusetts. Oh. The Lowell model is one of 4 units produced by NASA. The space agency held on to one robot for its own purposes and awarded 2 to the research of Northwestern and MIT, while the 4th lives in Scotland's University of Edinburgh. The 4 models are being tinkered and tailored on as we speak. Long story short, we've reached a peak in space travel where maybe living things don't have to make it or break it anymore. To reduce hazards and prevent any more life being lost or altered for science, the Valkyrie is an option for NASA to search very hazardous environments while keeping a pretty safe distance while doing so. Number 2. Ice cold. We all know about Jupiter's moon Europa. I was like 18 when I found out about all the planets' moons in our solar system. Yeah. Did you know that Jupiter has 79 moons? Like 79. Yeah, we have 1. Like, we know nothing, Jon Snow. Well, maybe we know something, because apparently we found traces of water on a couple different rocks now. Europa, the 6th largest moon in our solar system. It was discovered in 1610, and ever since then, we've kind of wondered what's on it. In 1979, the 2 Voyager spacecrafts passed through the Jovian system, providing the first hints that Europa may contain liquid water. The ground-based telescopes on Earth, along with the Galileo spacecraft and telescopes, have increased scientists' confidence for a European ocean. Yeah, cue NASA's Sesame program. Scientific exploration subsurface access mechanism for Europa. Sesame will not drill, however, but actually thaw its way under the icy ocean, and from there will operate small probes to conduct an array of research on biology, sediment, gases, and of course what we're all hoping for, humanoid mermaid-looking aliens. However, the part that really has NASA's attention is all of the tectonic activity beneath said icy shelf, meaning that somewhere in the middle, there's warm water flowing under with currents. Yeah, creepy. In 2011, NASA awarded Stone Aerospace $4 million to fund Phase 2 of Project Sesame. Phase 2 of the project consisted of testing the cryobot in Alaska in 2015. Phase 3 of the project will use a swarm of tiny robots the size of cell phones to whisk through the water beneath the thick icy shelf of Jupiter's moon, looking for evidence of alien life. The tiny robots would be released underwater, swimming far from their mothership to explore a new world. Basically, the cryobot melts its way through the subglacial lake, collects samples, resurfaces, and comes back home. Yeah, seems like an alien movie plot just ready for scripting, huh? And number 1, Artemis 1. So we haven't been back to the moon since 1972, but why? Well folks, we're going back. And soon, like 2 weeks soon. Yeah, I didn't know either, as I'm a millennial who doesn't watch the news on TV. We're going back to the moon, people, but not the Apollo program anymore. No, we've changed the name to another Greek name. They're twin, Artemis. Apparently, Artemis 1 will be the first in a series of increasingly complex missions to build a long-term human presence on the moon for decades to come. Oh yeah, we're staying. Like building forts and stuff. The primary goals for Artemis 1 are to demonstrate Orion's systems in a spaceflight environment and to ensure a safe re-entry, descent, splashdown, and recovery. Basically like the full shebang. Yeah, not taking any more risks, huh NASA? Safety first kind of deal. I like it. Not a long mission too. September 27th they're supposed to launch and splash back down here in November. Like 38 days long. Nice little quick one. And then reevaluate and select the people. Yeah, dude, this is sick. I'm down with Phase 2 space stuff, you know? Like, let's get that robot up there.
Number 5 on this list is danger. Maybe this number on the list would be better titled risk versus reward, honestly, because that's basically what it boils down to. Space travel is by far the most dangerous form of travel that we have. Like, everyone has heard someone tell them before that whenever you get in a car, you are taking a risk, which is true. You could get in a car accident at any point in time. But a lot of times, those car accidents result in little fender benders and for the most part, nothing major. If your space shuttle breaks down though, like even if a tiny little thing goes wrong, then that is very likely the end of your entire existence. And obviously, we've seen this happen before. Several space shuttles have exploded or malfunctioned, and astronauts have in fact died because of it. There's always going to be an immense danger when someone steps into a space shuttle and they're going to be risking their lives. Now, if the reward was incredible, then it might be worth it, but as we're going to talk about later in this video, the reward might not be that great. Like, at the end of the day, I truly don't think that I would be willing to go to space. I have the utmost respect for those who do decide to do it, but I just don't know if it's for me. The danger is just a bit too high.
Number 4, black holes. Black holes, yeah, these are significantly less scary all of a sudden. Or are they? These regions in space where gravity is so strong that nothing can escape has been quite the hot topic these days. Half of the 2020 Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to Roger Penrose for his mathematical work showing that black holes are an inescapable consequence of Einstein's theory of gravity. And of course, Andrea Ghez and Reinhard Genzel shared the other half for proving that a massive black hole sits in the center of our galaxy. Alright, I was almost not anxious for a second there. Black holes are terrifying for a couple reasons. If you fell into a black hole left over when a star died, you would be spaghetti. Yeah. Also, black holes are places where the laws of physics no longer exist. Reading this just reminds me we still know nothing, and we have iPhones. The first black hole confirmed was Cygnus X1, the brightest X-ray source in the Cygnus constellation. Since then, about 50 other black holes have been discovered in the systems. There are apparently 10 million that are expected to be scattered throughout the Milky Way galaxy alone. Last year, astronomers published the first ever picture of a black hole and its event horizon. A 7 billion solar mass Leviathan lays still in the M87 galaxy. It's over 1,000 times bigger than the black hole in our galaxy. These black holes are dark most of the time, but when their gravity pulls in nearby stars and gas, they pump out huge amounts of radiation. If you get too close to one of them, the enormous gravity will suck you in and time will seem to have stopped completely for you, just getting spaghettied for eternity. Yeah, that's horrifying. Number 3, the cosmic microwave background. The CMB, or famously known as simply the cold spot, is a region of the sky seen in microwaves that has been found to be unusually large and cold relative to the expected properties of the cosmic background radiation. The cold spot is approximately much colder than the average CMB temperature, and many theoretical explanations exist, including a so-called supervoid or great void that may exist outside of our galaxy. Such a void would be one of the largest structures in the observable universe. This would be an extremely large region of the universe containing a density of matter much smaller than the average density in space. A 2015 study shows a supervoid that has a radius of 1.8 billion light years across and is 3 billion light years away from our galaxy in the direction of the cold spot is likely associated with it. Although large voids are already known in the universe, a void would have to be exceptionally vast to explain being so cold. So it's dark, it's cold, and it's huge, and we have no idea what it is. Theories suggest it could be another universe beyond our own, caused by quantum entanglement. The problem with these theories is by standard cosmology, such a giant cosmic hole shouldn't exist. If the cold spot is in fact another universe merging with ours, then this provides the first evidence for a parallel universe. Could this be the long-lost dark energy astrophysicists talk about? Who knows, dude? Number 2, altered carbon. Preliminary results from NASA's Twins study reveal that 7% of astronaut Scott Kelly's genetic expression, DNA, and genes did not return to baseline after his return to home to Earth 2 years ago. I'm sorry, what? The study looks at what happened to astronaut Kelly before, during, and after he spent exactly 1 year aboard the International Space Station through an extensive comparison with his identical twin, Mark Kelly, who remained on Earth. Kelly's newly genetic expression had in fact changed. But who was he now? Well, good news, he and Mark are still identical twins. Changes in gene expression are how the human body reacts to the environment around it. Kelly's transformation suggests long-term alterations related to at least 5 biological pathways and functions. Something's different. The preliminary results from this study on Kelly, now retired from NASA, were released in 2018's workshop for NASA's human research. NASA published its first results, and the findings are a little nerve-wracking. To track physical changes caused by time and space, scientists measured Kelly's metabolites, cytokines, and proteins before, during, and after this mission. They learned that spaceflight is associated with oxygen deprivation stress, increased inflammation, and dramatic nutrient shifts that permanently affect gene expression and their makeup. The team focused on primarily chemical changes in RNA and DNA. 93% of Kelly's genetic expression stayed the same after re-entering our atmosphere. However, once he returned to Earth, several genes remained a little altered. Some of these, of course, are thought to be caused by the stresses of space travel itself, which is totally normal. Some, however, still have scientists scratching their heads. That's terrifying. And coming at the number 1 spot, Oumuamua. Oumuamua is the first interstellar object detected passing through the solar system. Formerly named 1-2017 U1, famously named Oumuamua, coming from the Hawaiian word scout, or roughly first distance traveler. As seen from the telescope at Haleakala Observatory in 2017 in Hawaii, discovered by Robert Wyrick using the Pan-STARRS telescope, it was about 33 million kilometers from Earth and heading away from the sun. And this is where it gets a little scary. The small object, only about a rugby field across and 10 rugby fields long, exhibited non-gravitational acceleration, turning away from the sun, potentially due to outgassing or a push from solar radiation. This thing came in fast, shot by us towards the sun, slowed down, and then changed its course. This so-called tumbling, shiny red anomaly moving fast through space is likely of an extrasolar origin. Yeah, that means it came from somewhere else. Came from another solar system. Oumuamua's path cannot be captured into a solar orbit, so it would eventually have to leave our solar system and continue into interstellar space at some point, leaving us with Millions of questions. But we were too late to catch it. Its whereabouts are now completely unknown. By 2019, some astronomers concluded that Oumuamua is most likely a natural object like comet or a rock. Of course, a small number of astronomers suggested that Oumuamua is a product of alien technology, and in January 2022, researchers introduced Project Lyra, which proposed that a spacecraft could be launched from Earth and might actually catch up to Oumuamua in 26 years for close-up studies. Being the first known object of its type, people have a lot of questions. Originally classified as a comet, then classified as an asteroid. Either case, we have an interstellar object, people, that seems to move, speed up, and turn on its own. So what's moving this thing? Radiation pressure, solar winds, or possibly an energy source made from some of our highly intelligent neighbors? Either or, this thing is absolutely terrifying, and if you're not familiar with the work of Professor Avi Loeb of Harvard, who is the leading expert on this anomaly, I highly recommend you check him out.